Have you ever had those days where you feel super ambitious, but also just incredibly lazy? Like you're stuck in this loop of knowing exactly what you should be doing, but you just can't make yourself do it? If that sounds familiar, this explainer is for you. We are going to break down a science-backed system for rewiring your brain to finally beat procrastination. Okay, let's get into it. This quote from our source material just hits so hard, right? It perfectly captures that feeling. It's not that you don't have dreams or potential, no way. It's that there's this huge gap between the person you want to be and what you actually do each day. And man, is that frustrating. It's draining, and it's a feeling so many of us share.
So, what if I told you that feeling of laziness isn't some deep character flaw? What if it has absolutely nothing to do with a lack of willpower? The sources we looked at suggest the real culprit here is a very modern problem. Our brains are just completely burned out from chasing the wrong kind of rewards. To fix this, we've got to understand what we're up against first. And here's a little spoiler for you. The enemy isn't you. It's something much sneakier. It's the constant, super easy to get rewards that are flooding our brains and basically hijacking our motivation every single day. Okay, so this slide breaks it down perfectly. Think of dopamine as a two-sided coin. On the left, we've got cheap dopamine. This is the stuff you get from scrolling social media or eating junk food. It gives you that little hit of pleasure before you even do anything, but look at that, it leaves you feeling drained and empty after. Now, on the right, that's real dopamine. This stuff costs you effort up front, like actually going for a run or building something, but it energizes you and builds real, lasting momentum afterwards. The big problem is our brains have gotten totally hooked on the cheap stuff, which makes doing the real important work feel almost impossible. So how do we start to fight back? Well, the first step is totally counterintuitive. It's not about gritting your teeth and trying harder. It's about making it almost laughably easy to just get started. And this right here, this is the whole game. We think we fail because a task is too big or too hard. But the real truth? We fail because we set the bar so high that we get paralyzed. We're waiting for this perfect plan or some huge wave of motivation to hit us, but that kind of perfectionism, it's the ultimate killer of momentum. So instead of psyching yourself out by thinking about the entire hour-long workout, your new goal is just this, something so ridiculously small that it's impossible to say no to. You see, the action itself is what creates the motivation, not the other way around. You don't have to face down that giant, intimidating project. Nope. You just have to take that one single, tiny first step. The idea is to make the bar so low that you can't help but step over it, even on your absolute worst day. And there's actually a scientific name for this feeling of resistance we all have. Behavioral scientists call it the activation barrier. It's that mental friction, that static you have to push through just to get going. By making that first step incredibly small, you basically sneak past this barrier and trick your brain into motion. Okay, so you've gotten started. Awesome. But how do you make it stick? How do you do it day after day? Well, the key is to stop relying on willpower, because that stuff runs out. It's time to build something way more powerful, turning those small actions into automatic behaviors. See, routines are draining. They feel like a chore. They run on your willpower, which is a limited resource. Rituals, on the other hand, are incredibly powerful because they're built on association. They use a specific cue to fire off a behavior almost automatically without you even having to think about it. It changes from that feeling of, I'd have to do this, to, oh, there's the cue. I guess it's time to start. So, how do you build one? It's pretty simple. You could use an audio cue, like a specific playlist you only listen to when it's time for deep work. Or a location cue, like leaving your yoga mat rolled out right next to your bed so it's the first thing you see. You could even use a tool, like lighting a specific candle right before you sit down to write. Over time, your brain forges this powerful link. This cue means it's focus time. It's basically classical conditioning for your own productivity. But here's the thing. To make these new, healthy habits feel good and rewarding, you might need to reset your brain's sensitivity first. It's time to clear out all the noise. The sources suggest trying a simple but really effective 24-hour dopamine detox. That means no mindless scrolling, no junk food, no having the TV on in the background. You're intentionally starving your brain of all that cheap, unsatisfying dopamine. And the goal isn't just to cut out the bad stuff, but to fill that empty space with activities that give you real dopamine. Things that take a bit of effort but actually give you energy back, like taking a long walk or cooking a nice meal. This whole process is really about relearning the lost art of being bored. And as this timeline shows, day one is probably going to feel pretty uncomfortable, maybe even a little bit agitating, and that's totally normal. But if you stick with it, you'll start to notice a shift. Around day 4, you'll feel a little more alert. And by the end of a week or so, your brain is reset. Hard tasks don't feel so overwhelming. Boredom stops being this thing you have to escape and becomes this quiet space where creativity and new ideas can finally bubble up. All right, so your brain is reset, you're building some solid rituals. Now let's talk about the final piece of the puzzle, setting of your environment so that success is pretty much guaranteed. The principle here is really simple. Just like you want to make good habits easier, you need to make your bad habits harder. You add friction. So if you're always getting distracted by your phone, don't just rely on willpower to ignore it. Physically leave it in another room while you work. That tiny bit of extra effort, that friction, is often way more effective than any amount of self-control. And for those moments when you still feel that giant wall of resistance, there's one final incredibly powerful tool we can use. And it all revolves around this one number. It's called the 5-minute rule. Here's how it works. You pick that one task you're avoiding, you set a timer for just 5 minutes, and this is the most critical part. You give yourself total permission to stop when that timer rings. The secret is that your brain doesn't resist continuing a task, it resists starting one. And what you'll find is that 9 times out of 10, once you're already in motion, you'll just keep going. And the reason this little trick works is actually fascinating. It's a psychological principle called the Zeigarnik effect. Basically, our brains are hardwired to hate open loops. They get really fixated on unfinished tasks and naturally want to close them. So the 5-minute rule cleverly creates this little unfinished task that your brain will then start pushing you to complete. So there you have it. The system is pretty clear. Figure out the dopamine problem, lower the bar so it's easy to start, build rituals instead of routines, detox your brain, and then use friction and the 5-minute rule to keep the momentum going. Which brings us to the final question. Don't worry about tomorrow or next week. Right now, what is one ridiculously small action you can take in the next 5 minutes to get started?